Last Friday night, my sister Emma was cutting her steak at dinner when her wedding ring slipped off her finger and rolled under the table. When I crawled down to get it, I noticed something I'd never seen before. There was an inscription inside the band. But it wasn't her husband's name or their wedding date. It was a name we'd been desperately searching for our entire lives. Margaret Rose Sullivan, 1952. That name belonged to our grandmother, who had supposedly died when our mother was just 3 years old. The grandmother we'd been told we'd never find any trace of. The grandmother whose existence had been erased from every family record we could find. But here's what we didn't know. That ring was about to unlock a family secret so devastating that it would explain why our mother had spent 40 years running from her past and why she'd made us promise never to look for our roots. My name is Rachel Thompson, and I'm about to tell you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about family secrets, identity, and the lengths people will go to protect the ones they love. This isn't just about finding a mysterious inscription in a ring. It's about discovering that sometimes the people we think are dead are actually the ones who saved us, and sometimes the family history we're told is a complete lie designed to keep us safe from a truth too dangerous to know. By the end of this story, you'll understand why some secrets are kept not to hurt us, but to protect us from something much worse than the truth. To understand why finding that name was so earth-shattering, you need to know about our family's missing history. Emma and I grew up with a mother, Linda, who claimed to remember almost nothing about her childhood. She said her parents had died in a car accident when she was 3, that she'd been raised by distant relatives who had also passed away, and that all family records had been lost in a house fire. For 40 years, Mom had maintained this story. No baby pictures, no family heirlooms, no relatives to visit during holidays. Just her, starting fresh, building a new life with no connection to her past. Emma and I had always been curious about our family history. In high school, we tried to research our genealogy for a school project, but every lead ended in a dead end. No birth certificates, no marriage records, no death certificates for our supposed grandparents. It was like our mother's family had never existed. When DNA testing became popular, we begged Mom to take a test, thinking it might connect us to distant relatives who could fill in the gaps. But she refused, becoming visibly upset whenever we brought it up. Some things are better left buried, she'd say. We have each other. That's all that matters. Emma had been married to her husband Jake for 3 years. Her wedding ring was a simple gold band that she'd bought at an estate sale because they couldn't afford anything expensive at the time. She'd always loved that ring, saying it felt like it had history and character. She'd never had it resized, even though it was slightly too big, because she was afraid of damaging whatever story it might hold. I like to think some woman wore this ring for 50 years and had a beautiful marriage, Emma used to say. Maybe some of that love will rub off on me and Jake. We had no idea how right she was. Last Friday, Emma and Jake came over for our monthly family dinner. Mom was there, along with my husband Mark and our 2 kids. It was supposed to be a normal evening. Good food, family conversation, maybe a board game afterward. Emma was cutting into her steak when her ring slipped off. She'd lost some weight recently due to stress at work, and the ring had been getting looser. "Shoot," she said, as the ring rolled under the dining room table. "Can someone help me find it?" I got down on my hands and knees and crawled under the table, using my phone's flashlight to search. The ring had rolled all the way to the other side, near Mom's feet. As I picked up the ring, the light from my phone caught something inside the band. There was an inscription, worn but still readable. "Emma, there's writing inside your ring," I called out from under the table. "What does it say?" I crawled out and held the ring up to the light, squinting to read the tiny engraved letters. Margaret Rose Sullivan, 1952. The room went completely silent. I looked up to see my mother's face had gone completely white. She was staring at the ring in my hand like she'd seen a ghost. "Mom? Are you okay?" Mom stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Where did you get that ring?" "I bought it at an estate sale 3 years ago, remember? You were with me." "What estate sale? Where?" Emma looked confused by Mom's sudden intensity. "The one on Maple Street. The old Victorian house. You said the ring was pretty and that I should get it since we couldn't afford a new one. Mom sat back down heavily, like her legs had given out. Mom, what's wrong? Do you recognize that name? Mom stared at the ring for a long moment, then looked up at us with tears in her eyes. Margaret Rose Sullivan was my mother's name. Emma and I exchanged glances. But Mom, you said your mother died when you were 3. You said you didn't remember anything about her. I lied. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. What do you mean you lied? Emma asked. Mom took a shaky breath. I mean, I've been lying to you girls your entire lives. About my childhood, about my parents, about why we have no family history. Mom looked around the table at all of us. Emma, Jake, Mark, me, and the kids, who were too young to understand the gravity of what was happening but could sense the tension. Margaret Rose Sullivan was my mother, and she didn't die when I was 3. She died 10 years ago, and I was at her funeral. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. Mom, that's impossible. We would have known. You would have told us. I couldn't tell you. I promised her I would never tell you. Emma was staring at her ring like it had betrayed her. So this was our grandmother's ring? Yes. And the fact that you found it, that you've been wearing it for 3 years without knowing, it's like she's been trying to tell you the truth even after I promised to keep it buried. Mom, I said slowly, if Grandma died 10 years ago and Emma bought this ring 3 years ago at an estate sale, the estate sale was her house. I was there because I was helping settle her affairs, but I couldn't tell you that. When Emma fell in love with the ring, I thought maybe it was meant to be. Maybe she deserved to have something of her grandmother's, even if she could never know the truth. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You let me buy our grandmother's ring without telling me? I wanted you to have it, but I couldn't tell you why. Mark, who has been quietly listening, finally spoke up. Linda, why couldn't you tell them about their grandmother? What was so terrible that you had to erase your entire family history? Mom looked around the table again, then focused on Emma and me. Because your grandmother didn't just die 10 years ago. She spent the last 40 years of her life in witness protection. And if anyone had connected you girls to her, it could have gotten all of us killed. The room went dead silent, except for the sound of my youngest daughter asking for more juice, completely oblivious to the fact that our entire family history had just been rewritten.
Witness protection? Emma whispered. Mom, what are you talking about? Mom stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street like she was checking for something. In 1982, when I was 23, my mother witnessed a murder. Not just any murder. She saw a prominent businessman kill his business partner over a deal gone wrong. The businessman was connected to some very dangerous people. She turned back to face us. Mom was the only witness. Without her testimony, this man would have walked free. But testifying meant putting a target on our entire family's back. The FBI offered us witness protection, but there was a catch. My mother would have to disappear completely. New name, new location, no contact with anyone from her old life, including me. I was trying to process this information. So, you didn't go into witness protection with her? I was 23, married to your father, and pregnant with Emma. The FBI said it would be safer if I stayed behind and created a completely new identity for myself. If anyone came looking for Margaret Sullivan's family, they would find Linda Thompson, a woman with no traceable past. Emma was crying now. So, you've been protecting us our whole lives from people who might want to hurt us because of something Grandma saw 40 years ago? Yes. Mom sat back down at the table, looking exhausted. For 40 years, I couldn't contact my mother directly. We had a system. Once a year, on my birthday, she would send a postcard to a P.O. box I maintained under a fake name. Just a generic postcard with a single word written on it. Safe. That's how I knew she was alive. And once a year, I would send her a postcard back with updates about you girls, your first steps, your first words, your school achievements, your graduations, your weddings. Mom looked at Emma.
She knew all about you, sweetheart. She knew about your job, your marriage to Jake, your dreams of starting a family. She just couldn't be part of your life. 10 years ago, the postcards stopped coming. I waited for months, hoping maybe she'd just been delayed or had to move again. But then I got a call from an FBI agent I'd never spoken to before. Mom's voice broke. He told me that Margaret Rose Sullivan had died of cancer. She'd been sick for months, but hadn't wanted to worry me. She had left specific instructions that I was to be notified of her death, but that her location and new identity were to remain classified. So, you went to her funeral? I went to her funeral. It was in a small town in Oregon, and she was buried under the name Mary Roberts. There were maybe 10 people there. FBI agents, a few neighbors who had known her as Mary, and me.
Mom wiped her eyes with her napkin. Before she died, she made me promise something. She made me promise that I would never tell you girls about her, never let you search for family history, never let you take DNA tests that might connect you to her real identity. Why? I asked. Because even though the man she testified against died in prison 15 years ago, his associates are still alive. His son took over the family business. And according to the FBI, these people have long memories and longer reach. Emma was staring at her ring again. So wearing this ring, is it dangerous? I don't know. I've been asking myself that question for 3 years, ever since you bought it. Mark leaned forward. Linda, do you think the threat is still real after all these years? I don't know. The FBI agent who called me about Mom's death said the case was officially closed, but that didn't mean the danger was over. He said as long as no one connected Linda Thompson to Margaret Sullivan, we should be safe. Mom looked around the table. But now, you know. And I don't know what that means for our safety. I felt a chill run down my spine. Mom, should we be worried? Should we call the FBI? I don't know. The agent who contacted me retired years ago. I don't even know who to call. That night, after everyone had gone home, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything Mom had told us, about the grandmother we'd never known, about the danger that might still be lurking in our family's past. I got up and started researching online. I searched for Margaret Rose Sullivan, for the murder case from 1982, for any information I could find about what our family had been running from. What I found made my blood run cold. The murder case had been huge news in 1982. Vincent Caruso, a prominent businessman with alleged mob connections, had been accused of killing his business partner, Anthony Ricci, over a disputed real estate deal. The case had hinged on the testimony of a single witness, a cleaning lady who had been working late in the office building and had seen the murder through a window. The witness was identified in court documents only as Margaret S. To protect her identity, Vincent Caruso had been convicted and sentenced to life in prison. He died behind bars in 2007. But here's what made my blood run cold. Vincent Caruso Jr. had taken over his father's business empire, and according to recent news articles, he was very much alive and still very much connected to organized crime.
I spent hours digging deeper into the Caruso family history. What I found was a pattern of violence and revenge that spanned decades. In 1995, a former associate who had testified against Vincent Caruso Sr. had been found dead in his home along with his wife and teenage son. The murders were never solved. In 2003, another witness from a different case involving the Caruso family had disappeared along with his entire family. They were never found. In 2010, A journalist who had been investigating the Caruso family's business dealings had died in what was ruled a car accident, but many people suspected foul play. The pattern was clear. The Caruso family didn't forget, and they didn't forgive. The next morning, I called Emma and told her what I'd found. She was terrified. "Rachel, what do we do? Do we tell Mom? Do we call the police?" "I don't know, but I think we need to find out more about what happened to Grandma and witness protection. Maybe there are FBI agents who are still monitoring the situation." We decided to drive to Mom's house together to share what I'd discovered and figure out our next steps. When we arrived, Mom was sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a manila envelope. "I was hoping you girls would come by," she said. "I have something to show you." Mom opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs and letters. "After you left last night, I went up to the attic and got these. I've been keeping them hidden for 40 years, but I think it's time you saw them." The photographs were of a woman who looked exactly like an older version of our mother. She was in various settings: a garden, a kitchen, sitting on a porch with a dog. "This is your grandmother. These pictures were taken during her time in witness protection. She sent them to me over the years through our FBI contact." Emma picked up one of the photos. "She looks just like you, Mom, and like us." "She was beautiful," I said, studying a photo of Grandma reading a book in what looked like a cozy living room. "She was. And she was brave. Braver than I ever could have been." Mom handed us a stack of letters, all written in the same careful handwriting. "These she wrote to you girls over the years. Birthday letters, Christmas letters, letters for your graduations and weddings. She wrote them knowing you'd probably never read them, but she wanted to document her love for you anyway." I opened the letter marked for Rachel's 16th birthday and started reading. "My dearest granddaughter Rachel, today you turn 16, and I wish more than anything that I could be there to celebrate with you. Your mother tells me you're smart and funny and kind, just like she was at your age. I hope someday you'll understand why I couldn't be part of your life, and I hope you'll forgive me for the choice I made to keep you safe instead of keeping you close. I love you more than you'll ever know. Your Grandma Margaret." I was crying before I finished reading.
Emma opened her wedding letter with shaking hands. "My beautiful Emma, your mother tells me you're marrying a wonderful man named Jake today. I wish I could be there to see you in your wedding dress, to dance at your reception, to give you the family ring that's been passed down through our family for generations. That ring is in a jewelry box in my bedroom, waiting for the day when it's safe for you to have it. It belonged to my grandmother, then to me, and someday I hope it will belong to you. Until that day comes, know that I'm thinking of you and sending you all my love on your special day. Your Grandma Margaret." Emma looked up from the letter, tears streaming down her face. She wanted me to have the ring. She knew about the ring. "What ring?" Mom asked. Emma held up her wedding ring. "This ring, the one I bought at the estate sale, the one with her name inscribed inside." Mom stared at the ring, then at the letter, then back at the ring. "That's impossible. The ring she mentioned in the letter should still be in her house in Oregon. The FBI told me her belongings were being held until it was safe to release them." I pulled out my phone and showed Mom the research I'd done the night before. "Mom, I think the danger might still be real. Vincent Caruso Jr. is still alive, and there's a pattern of violence against people who testified against his family." Mom's face went pale again. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe Grandma's belongings weren't being held by the FBI. Maybe someone else got to them first." Emma was staring at her ring with a new understanding. "You think someone from the Caruso family found Grandma's house? Found her things?" "I think it's possible. And if they did, they might have been trying to trace any family connections." Mom stood up abruptly. "We need to call the FBI, now. Mom, you said you didn't know who to call. I'll figure it out. This is too dangerous to ignore."
It took Mom 3 hours and a dozen phone calls, but she finally reached someone at the FBI who was familiar with our case. Agent Sarah Martinez had taken over the files when the original agent retired. Agent Martinez agreed to meet with us that afternoon at Mom's house. When she arrived, she was a woman in her 40s with a serious expression and a thick file folder. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm glad you called. We've been trying to reach you for several months." "What do you mean?" Agent Martinez opened her file. Margaret Sullivan's house in Oregon was broken into 6 months ago. Someone went through all of her belongings very systematically. We believe they were looking for information about her family. What did they take? I asked. That's the strange part. They didn't take anything valuable, but they photographed everything. Letters, documents, personal items, including a jewelry box that contains several pieces of family jewelry. Emma held up her ring. Including this? Agent Martinez looked at the ring, then at her file. Can I see that? Emma handed over the ring, and Agent Martinez examined the inscription with a magnifying glass. This is definitely one of the pieces that was photographed, but according to our inventory, this ring should still be in evidence storage. So how did it end up at an estate sale 3 years ago? I asked. Agent Martinez was quiet for a moment. I think someone has been watching your family for a long time, and I think they've been very patient. Agent Martinez explained that the FBI had been monitoring unusual activity around our family for the past year. Strange cars parked on our street, people asking questions about us in our neighborhood, attempts to access our employment and school records. We thought it might be related to the Caruso family, but we couldn't prove it. Now with this ring servicing, I think we have confirmation. What confirmation? Mom asked. That Vincent Caruso Jr. has been systematically tracking down everyone connected to his father's conviction, and that includes your family. Emma was gripping Jake's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. So we're in danger? I believe you are, and I believe the ring was planted at that estate sale specifically for one of you to find.
Agent Martinez continued. Think about it. What are the odds that Emma would happen to be at an estate sale where her grandmother's ring was being sold? What are the odds that she would choose that specific ring out of all the jewelry available? You think someone wanted us to find the ring? I asked. I think someone wanted you to start asking questions about your family history. I think they wanted you to eventually figure out the connection to Margaret Sullivan. But why? Because once you knew the truth, you'd be more vulnerable. You'd start researching, making phone calls, leaving digital footprints. You'd lead them right to any other family members or associates they might have missed. Agent Martinez closed her file. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to move all of you to a safe location while we investigate the extent of the surveillance. Second, we're going to use this situation to our advantage. What do you mean? Mom asked. We're going to let the Caruso family think their plan worked. We're going to let them think you've discovered the truth and are vulnerable, and then we're going to catch them when they make their move. I felt sick to my stomach. You want to use us as bait? I want to end this threat once and for all. Your grandmother spent 40 years in hiding because of these people. Your mother spent 40 years lying to protect you. It's time to finish what Margaret Sullivan started. We had 24 hours to decide whether to go along with the FBI's plan or disappear into witness protection ourselves. That night, Emma and I sat up talking about our grandmother, about the life she sacrificed to keep us safe, about the courage it must have taken to testify against dangerous people, knowing it would cost her everything.
She gave up her family to protect us, Emma said. The least we can do is finish what she started. Are you sure? This is dangerous, Em. We have kids to think about. That's exactly why we have to do this. I don't want my children to grow up the way we did, with no family history, no connection to their roots. I want them to know about their great-grandmother who was brave enough to do the right thing, even when it cost her everything. We agreed to cooperate with the FBI. Over the next 2 weeks, we followed a carefully orchestrated plan designed to make us look vulnerable and accessible to anyone who might be watching. Emma wore her grandmother's ring everywhere, making sure it was visible. I started researching our family history online, using search terms that would trigger any monitoring software. Mom began making phone calls to various government agencies, asking about witness protection records. All the while, FBI agents were watching us, waiting for someone to make a move. The move came on a Tuesday evening.
Emma was leaving her office when a man approached her in the parking garage. "Excuse me, are you Emma Thompson?" Emma, who was wearing a wire and had FBI agents positioned nearby, followed the script we'd rehearsed. "Yes, who's asking?" "My name is Tony Caruso. I believe you have something that belongs to my family." Emma held up her hand, showing the ring. "You mean this? That ring belonged to the woman who destroyed my father's life. I want it back." "I'm sorry, but this is my ring. I bought it legally." Tony Caruso stepped closer, and Emma could see the FBI agents moving into position. "Lady, you don't understand. That ring is the least of what you owe my family. Your grandmother cost us everything. Now it's time to pay."
That's when the FBI agents moved in. Tony Caruso was arrested, along with 2 associates who had been watching from a nearby car. In his possession, they found detailed surveillance photos of our entire family, copies of documents from our grandmother's house, and a plan to kidnap Emma and use her to draw out any other family members who might have information about his father's case. The 40-year nightmare was finally over. 6 months later, Tony Caruso and his associates were convicted of conspiracy, stalking, and attempted kidnapping. The judge sentenced them to lengthy prison terms, effectively ending the Caruso family's ability to threaten anyone else. For the first time in 40 years, our family was truly safe. We held a memorial service for our grandmother, Margaret Rose Sullivan, in the cemetery where she was buried under her assumed name. The FBI allowed us to add a small plaque with her real name and the dates of her birth and death. Emma still wears the ring every day, but now she knows its true history. It's not just a piece of jewelry from an estate sale. It's a connection to a grandmother who loved us enough to sacrifice everything to keep us safe. The most amazing part of this story came 3 months after the arrests. Agent Martinez called to tell us that our grandmother had a sister, Margaret's younger sister Rose, who had also been in witness protection for 40 years. Rose had been living in Florida under an assumed name, and like our grandmother, she had been forbidden from contacting family members. But with the threat eliminated, she was finally free to reconnect with the family she lost. Last month, we met our great-aunt Rose for the first time. She's 78 years old, sharp as a tack, and looks exactly like our grandmother did in the photos. She brought with her 40 years' worth of stories about our grandmother, photo albums from their childhood, and most importantly, the truth about our family history. Our grandmother hadn't just been a cleaning lady who witnessed a murder. She had been Vincent Caruso Sr.'s bookkeeper, and she had discovered that he was embezzling money from his business partners and using it to fund illegal activities. When Anthony Ricci, Caruso's business partner, threatened to expose the embezzlement, Caruso killed him. Our grandmother witnessed the murder, but more importantly, she had copies of all the financial records that proved Caruso's crimes. Her testimony hadn't just put a murderer in prison, it had brought down an entire criminal organization.
Today, Emma and I know the truth about our family. We know that we come from a line of strong, brave women who stood up for what was right, even when it cost them everything. Our children know about their great-great-grandmother Margaret, who chose justice over safety, truth over comfort, and the protection of her family over her own happiness. And every time Emma looks at her ring, she remembers that love sometimes means sacrifice, that courage sometimes means giving up everything you hold dear, and that family bonds can survive decades of separation and silence. The ring that fell off Emma's finger during dinner wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a message from a grandmother we never met, a woman who had spent 40 years loving us from a distance, protecting us in the only way she could. Margaret Rose Sullivan had given up her family to save her family. She had chosen a lifetime of loneliness to ensure that her daughter and granddaughters could live freely and safely. The inscription inside that ring, Margaret Rose Sullivan, 1952, wasn't just a name and a date. It was a promise that love endures, that sacrifice matters, and that sometimes the people who seem absent from our lives are actually the ones working hardest to protect us. But the most important lesson we learned wasn't about family history or criminal conspiracies or even courage in the face of danger. It was about the power of truth to set us free. For 40 years, our family had lived with lies designed to protect us, but those lies had also isolated us, cut us off from our roots, and made us feel like we had no history worth knowing. The truth was dangerous, yes, but the truth was also liberating. It connected us to a legacy of strength and courage. It gave us a story worth telling. It made us proud of where we came from. But there's one more thing about this story that I haven't told you yet, something we discovered just last week that makes me believe our grandmother is still watching over us, still finding ways to bring our family together. Because when we were going through the belongings that the FBI finally released from our grandmother's house, we found something that changes everything we thought we knew about why she really went into witness protection. We found a birth certificate, not hers, ours. A birth certificate for a baby girl born in 1983, a year after our grandmother disappeared. A baby girl named Margaret Rose Thompson. A baby girl our mother never told us about, a baby girl who would be our sister. And according to the adoption records we found with the birth certificate, she's been living just 2 towns over from us our entire lives. Our grandmother didn't just protect the family she had, she protected the family she knew was coming. But that's a story for another day.